Alright, next what you want to go ahead and do is lay your two bodice pieces with the wrong sides facing each other. Alright, and we're going to pin them at the side seams, and we're going to baste these in place. Now we're going to go ahead and baste these in place using a zigzag stitch. Alright, go ahead and line up the edge of the bodice with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. We're using a narrow zigzag stitch, and I have the stitch length and the stitch width to the maximum possible. So on my machine, the length is 4.0 and the width is 3.0. So go ahead and lower your needle. And we're just basting this in place, so there will be no need to backstitch. So just go ahead and begin sewing until you get to the end. And once you finish this side, you can go ahead and repeat the process on the other side as well. Alright, the next thing that we need to do is gather the top part of the skirt portion of our dress. So in between these dots, we're going to do rows of gathering stitches. So at 3/8 of an inch and 5/8 of an inch. Now before we do that, we need to wind our bobbin with some elastic thread. So grab your elastic thread and a bobbin. Alright, so to wind your bobbin, you're not going to do it on your machine because that would pull the elastic too tight. We need to wind it by hand. And don't worry, it's not going to take you all day. Okay, it fills up pretty quickly because it's not as thin as regular thread. So to wind your bobbin, what you want to do is first take the tail and push it through one of the ends, one of the openings. And then you just want to hold that in place and begin to gently wind your bobbin. Now I'm not pulling it extra tight, I'm just I'm just winding it. I'm not pulling too hard. I'm just letting it naturally wind how it wants to wind. And again, I'm not pulling it tight, I'm just wrapping it around. And I'm switching off hands so that I can get an equal amount on both sides because my thumb is in my way. So I'm just going back and forth. Alright, and you would drop this into your bobbin like you normally do your bobbin thread. Alright, before I sew my fabric, I'm just taking a piece of scrap fabric just to test it out first. Okay, I see that my bobbin thread is come up nicely. So now I am good to go. Alright, starting at your 3/8 of an inch dot, you want to go ahead and line up your needle with that dot. And we're using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So yeah, so I'm using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm starting at the first dot. Go ahead and turn your machine to a straight stitch. Use the, you're going to be using a basting stitch. So for me, the longest stitch on my machine is 5.0, but I'm going to use a stitch length of 4.5. So just under the longest stitch length. Go ahead and lower your needle. There's no need to backstitch. Just go ahead and continue sewing until you get to the other dot on the other side. All right, and you want to continue sewing until you get to your other 3/8 of an inch dot. All right, once you get to that dot, do not back stitch. Go ahead and lift up, go ahead and raise your needle and pull out a tail of threads. All right, and let's go ahead and repeat that process for our second row of gathers. Next, we're going to do another row of gathers using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to start our needle right where our 5/8 of an inch dot is. So I'm repeating the same process, lowering my needle at that large dot, not back stitching. I'm just going to start sewing until I get to the other large dot on the other side. And then once I reach the other side, I'm going to stop at that large dot, not back stitching, just lifting up my needle and cutting a tail of threads. All right, next thing what you want to go ahead and do is lay out your bodice with the bottom edge of the bodice here at the bottom, and then lay your skirt with the top edge here. What you want to go ahead and do is find those snips that we made at the bottom of our bodice and at the center front of the skirt piece. So what you want to go ahead and do is line those up with each other. And then I'm just going to place a pin to hold that in place. Next, what we're going to go ahead and do is pull our gathering stitches, and we want to gather each side so that it'll line up evenly with our bodice. So you'll see with your gathering stitches that you have a total of 4 threads. So all you want to do is grab both of the elastic threads. So for me, those are the white threads. And what you want to do is begin pulling. And this is going to create your gathers. So I'm pulling and then moving them towards the center. Alright, and as you're gathering, you do want to pull them towards the center, and then you want to stop and check when you feel like you're getting close. So I'm going to test it up against my bodice. Alright, and I can see I have about 3 more inches left that I need to continue gathering. So I'm going to scoot them down to the center because you want to make sure you have some up here in the front. Alright, so I pulled it a little bit and it looks like it's shorter, but when you're testing the skirt to the bodice, make sure that you're laying it flat. So I'm laying it towards the bodice, holding it. Laying and holding. And if it's too much, you can just pull out the gathers. Right? I see that side is good. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing on the other side. Alright, so I was going a little bit too fast on this side, being a little bit too rough, and my 3/8 of an inch stitch popped. So what I did, because I'm not about to rip this whole thing out. So what I did was I cut the second row and then I just continued gathering. But now I'm going to pause on that a bit. Now I am going to have to take out this portion. Yeah, this top row. But I didn't want to have to do the whole thing. So that is, if you end up breaking your stitches, being too rough, that's why I should have been calming down. I'm over here jamming to my music and bow, just popped. So be gentle, don't be like me, okay? Take your time. And so yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and fix that. But if you so happen to do the same thing, then you can, wherever it snaps, just go ahead and continue gathering, whatever, and then I'll just fix this side in a little bit. Alright, so since I popped my stitches here, what I went ahead and did was did 2 fresh rows of stitches from where they popped at. So from where it didn't pop, I just left it the same and left the gathers and the thread the same, and then I just went ahead and removed them from this this section here, and I'm going to gather this up as well, being very gentle, talking to myself, gentle. That's the reason why we had to start over in the first place. Going too fast, slow it down. I guess I get too excited sometimes. Like anxious, wanting to like, ooh, it's coming together so nicely. So don't be all rough with your gathers. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and test this side. And I'm pressing, remember you're laying it flat to see if it lines up evenly. Alright, and I see that the ends are meeting up, so I know that my skirt will now fit my bodice. So now let's go ahead and tie off our gathering stitches. So you can double check one more time that everything matches up. So I'm going to double check. That side is good. Okay, we can go ahead and tie these off. So what I'm going to do is trim it a little bit shorter. And now I'm going to tie 3 knots. And then I'm going to tie these off the same exact way. Alright, and the next thing that you want to go ahead and do is even out these gathers along the top edge. Because as you can see, I have like some gaps here where there are no gathers, and it's very full over here. So I'm going to go ahead and start gently moving those towards the center to even everything out. Alright, once you have your gathers nice and even along the top, you can go ahead and decide which side you want to be, for your bodice, decide which side you want to be the outside and which side you want to be the inside. Because they're both the same, so it doesn't matter which side you choose. But once you do, go ahead and now lay it with the right side of your bodice touching the right side of your skirt. Find that center front point on both the bodice at the bottom edge. So right now I'm working with the bottom edge of the bodice, and I'm going to line it up with the top edge of the skirt. So go ahead and line up those center front points. And then now you can go ahead and pin the bottom of the bodice to the top edge of the skirt on both sides. Alright, go ahead and line up the edge with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead and lower your needle. And as you're sewing, go ahead and leave your left hand here to help guide you through, and you can take your right hand and also guide, but you want to help keep those you want to keep your gathering stitches nice and flat. And at the beginning, make sure you backstitch and sew all the way until you get to the end, and remember to backstitch again. Now you can go ahead and press this seam allowance going upwards towards the bodice. Alright, the next thing we want to do is go ahead and remove the 5/8 of an inch row of basting stitches, and this one is very easy to do. These gathers are so easy to remove. All you want to do is take your seam ripper, and then you want to pull out the elastic thread. That is the easiest thread to pull out. Don't try to do the regular thread. So grab your seam ripper and begin picking it out. And just pull up a tail of them. Then pull cut another end. And then all you have to do is pull. See? Just pulled it right out. So you're going to do that across the entire top, pulling out the elastic thread, and then you'll notice on the back that my color is black, that the other thread just comes right up as well. So this row of gathering stitches is very easy to remove. Alright, next go ahead and grab your scissors, and we're going to trim this seam allowance. So you'll notice that we have the skirt seam, and there are two pieces for the bodice seam. What we are going to do is trim the seam that's right in the middle. This is going to help cut down the bulk. So the piece that's right in the middle, go ahead and cut that one down.